Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, you know it's a period piece because a record store can afford to have like 9 employees working at the same time. This is Empire Records. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I'm sorry. Ian clearly was not ready for me to start talking.
I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Movies like, I've skipped it. Movies like Empire Records, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, we didn't introduce ourselves, but we kind of did. How are you doing this week?
I'm ambivalent.
Yeah.
No, I read that wrong. I am bivalent. I got the new bivalent COVID booster this week. It knocked me out for a day, as these things do, but I'm glad to finally have some Omicron protection. The BA4, BA5, I got all the defenses up. I'm going to try to stay healthy.
You ambivalent.
It's the only way to be.
So true. No, that's good. I've been eyeing this thing. I want to get it. I'm a big baby when I don't feel well. If I feel flu-like symptoms the next day, I'm going to want to take a day off work or be a weekend where I don't have anything going on. And I got 2 kids, man. There's very few weekends where I don't have anything going on. So trying to find a convenient day to lay on the couch for an entire day has been difficult.
Yeah. Who has that kind of time? It's hard.
Not me, but I'm definitely planning on getting it soon so I can go out and start, licking strangers like the old days.
It's nice. I'm going to get started this weekend. So what have you been keeping busy with if you're not getting shots?
I feel like I'm doing my COVID hobbies all backwards. I recently got back into a hobby that I used to do for years and years. I enjoyed it a lot. And it's a hobby I think a lot of people took up during COVID. But now in the way that people hyperfixate on things for a couple months, then forget about them, it's been forgotten. But I'm getting back into brewing my own beer, which I know is like a thing. People like to make fun of people that brew their own beer because they always force it on people.
Yeah.
I will force it on you if you come over to my house. You're going to drink my beer and you're going to like it, or at least you're going to lie to my face about it.
I think the reason a lot of people make fun is that the beer is often not very drinkable. I somehow suspect that your beer is actually quite tasty because you're a man of fine food and beverage, and you wouldn't serve me something that didn't taste good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I take my beer seriously. Not to drop a John tidbit so early in the episode, but a few years back, I did take the Cicerone course to become a Cicerone, which is like a beer sommelier when I was working in the beer industry, and I wanted to have that under my belt so I could move up the ladder, I guess.
Yeah.
And I just abandoned that industry completely as a career.
Yeah, that's serious.
Doesn't pay very well at all. But I much prefer beer as a hobby, a passion, as opposed to a career, I think. But yeah. I've often toyed with the idea of opening up a brewery one day. So we'll see. Maybe I'll get inexplicably rich somehow and I could just make it happen.
One day you'll be that mysterious brew pub bartender in a coastal New England town.
God, I hope so. But I'll keep my family. I'm not going to fake my death like the tweet. I like my family. But we're in New England, so I'm part of the way there.
You're close.
Did you watch anything this week you thought would be fun to tell the listeners about? I know we both have relatively recent movies to bring to show and tell today, so why don't you start?
Yeah, I saw something fun. It's called Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. It's a new movie, just came out this summer. I don't even know where it's all available online, but when you get to see it, go see it. That is my recommendation. It's based on some characters created by one Dean Fleischer Camp and Jenny Slate, who you might know from her acting work. She's a great comedic actress.
And dramatic. She made a movie called The Obvious Child a few years ago that was more of a drama. It was very good.
Yeah, we like Jenny Slate. I'm not going to tell you too much about what happens in this movie because it's one of those that you just say, go watch it. You'll be delighted. It's a lovely, lovely little movie. It's a fantastical concept. There is a talking shell in it, but it manages to achieve this incredible verite in the way that it's made so that it feels totally natural. It also has all these timeless themes like you'd expect in a semi-animated movie, life and family and all this warm, good feeling stuff. But it puts them in this context of very contemporary threads about modern living, social media. It feels really fresh and it just has such a sweet heart to it. It's a gem of a movie.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the YouTube shorts for Marcel the Shell with Shoes On that came out probably about a decade ago at this point.
Oh, okay.
Maybe even a little more. Yeah, I seem to remember them going hand in hand with the early internet meme stuff, and Marcel was kind of popular around that time.
I see.
I believe Jenny Slate and Dean Fleischer Camp were even dating when they started making the originals, which is why they're no longer together, which is cool that they were able to come together and make the movie. I'm very excited to see it. Big fan of the character and just like the tone of the movie from the trailers and everything looks really pleasant.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to watch it. I might watch it with my son this weekend. I don't know is it a kid's movie or is it like a movie that just has that optimism that kids movies have?
It totally makes sense for adults. You're not lowering yourself to kids material when you watch it, and yet it's completely wholesome and sweet and about family and love and relationships and growing up. Yeah, it's both in the best kind of way.
Nice. All those themes, like you said, and the warm heart of it. Unfortunately, I have a movie to bring that has none of those. It brings me no joy to report that Thor: Love and Thunder is actually quite bad. Frequent listeners will recall I had bought tickets to see it opening weekend, but there was some kind of crazy COVID surge happening. And I was starting to see the reviews were coming out. And I was like, I don't know if I want to risk COVID for this fucking movie. So I stayed my ass home, waited for it to come to Disney Plus. We all thought it would come to Disney Plus like mid-August. And they said, no, fuck you. We're saving it for D23 day or whatever.
Okay.
And we had to wait an extra 3 weeks. And all that anticipation got me. And I was excited to sit down and watch it on release day. Man, I don't know how else to say it, but I think something is deeply broken at the heart of the MCU.
Wow. That's more than just like this movie misfired. That's a serious.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about their recent output that I just cannot connect with at all. And I'm no snob who is anti comic book movies. I love comic book movies. I love comic books. I grew up reading comic books quite avidly. The movie just, there's no soul. Like there's no heart to any of it lately. I think the last Marvel movie I enjoyed was Shang-Chi. And out of all the shows, WandaVision and Loki were pretty good. I haven't seen all of She-Hulk yet, so I can't judge it. I haven't seen Miss Marvel yet either. But I don't know. It all just feels like homework. Like watching a Marvel movie or a show now feels like something I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
To like be part of a conversation, but not something I necessarily want to do. And I don't know when that shift happened. Maybe it was with Endgame, but something is just off with the Marvel output lately.
It's funny because even though you're telling me very honestly that it sucked and it was a major disappointment, I'm like, but I still have to see it because look at the colors and the people. It's such a shiny object that I will still be unable to resist turning it on. Now, I may turn it off real fast, but that's just a sign, I guess, that it's got so much working for it. Like we love these actors, we love these characters, these ideas of superheroes flying around in our movies, and yet they're able to disappoint. It's a real shame.
My grand theory about what went wrong with Love and Thunder, because I think Thor Ragnarok is my favorite MCU movie, and a lot of the team is back for this one. Taika Waititi is directing, Chris Hemsworth obviously is back. Maybe missing Tom Hiddleston and Mark Ruffalo is a big part of what's wrong with it. But I also think the Thor franchise, Marvel didn't really see it as a marquee part of their catalog when they were making Ragnarok. This is all conjecture, but maybe they didn't try to guide Waititi's hand as much, and they were kind of like, make whatever weird movie you want to make, and there's no grand vision behind it. There's nothing you have to achieve for the more overarching story. And then here, like Love and Thunder is doing a lot of laying the groundwork for future movies, explaining past movies that maybe we haven't seen. And it just feels like it's trying to do too much, and it feels more like a checklist of things they just had to get through.
That's a real shame, because even the title, Love and Thunder, it sounds provocative. Big emotions right there in the title. Give me that. Don't give me a checklist.
And they went with an 80s hair metal aesthetic, which I was like, that would be a fun direction to take Thor. Guns N' Roses featured prominently in the marketing materials, and I don't know, it just didn't work for me. Empire Records, though. We're beating around the bush here. We haven't mentioned today's movie much at all. Ian, what did you know about Empire Records? Did you remember it? Did you think it came out after High Fidelity like I did? And then you cut that out of last week's episode very kindly?
No, I'll tell you how much I knew about this movie up until just before I watched it. I thought it was about a record company. I was like, oh, I'm into that. It's a movie about these young hip kids who run a record label. Oh, it's a record store. Okay. I had no idea what this thing was. So it was a blank slate for me.
I think I was too young to know about this movie when it came out in 1995. I was like 8 years old when this movie came out. It definitely missed me for a while, but then it played on HBO a lot, or, Showtime, whatever, the illegal box. If it was on TV somewhere, I could watch it. But it never really connected with me. It was like background noise a lot of my youth, but I couldn't tell you what the plot was, any of the characters' names. And I feel like maybe it's an anachronism from when I watched it as a kid. I still call a lot of the characters' names by their actor names, like in my notes.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's Liv Tyler doing here? Ethan Embry sure is a weirdo. Well, I'm like, no, they have names and you should learn them if you're going to do a fucking podcast about it. But I don't know if I was aware of its kind of like huge cult status until like a few weeks before I put it on the list. A good friend of mine was like, you should cover Empire Records because that was a bomb and it's like the best movie ever.
Oh.
It was my favorite movie for years and years. And I was like, oh shit. And I looked it up and it was indeed a bomb. And I was like, all right, we'll put it on the schedule, and then started researching it. And it's a big deal. Like this movie has diehard fans still going to this day. Rex Manning Day is a big deal on Twitter, on social media. If you go on social media on April 8th, you're going to see a lot of Rex Manning Day posts.
That's just weird to me. He's not the cool part of the movie. He's the butt of the joke of the movie. I guess it gives you a day. It gives you something.
It's just a touchstone.
Yeah.
It's a shorthand. Now everyone knows that you love Empire Records, and if they love Empire Records too, maybe you guys can be friends. But yeah, having it honor Rex Manning, who's ostensibly maybe like the secondary villain of the movie.
Yeah.
But is he really that villainous? We'll have to get into it.
Yeah.
He's definitely creepy, but is he really a bad guy?
We'll take him apart. There's a lot going on with Rex.
Especially with his hair. People keep remarking upon it. Do you want me to walk through the making of this movie? Because it was kind of an interesting process that got the movie written and made, and the release of it was not so smooth.
Yeah, let's hear how this thing happened.
All right. Empire Records is now a beloved relic of the 90s, but its story actually starts way back in 1983. That is when high school senior Carol Heikkinen was hired to work in the video department of a Tower Records in Phoenix, Arizona. Heikkinen would keep the job throughout college and eventually become a screenwriter, having written the script for 1993's The Thing Called Love. She turned her sights on her own past for her next project, a script based on her time at Tower Records about a group of teens and 20-somethings coming of age while working in the local record store. There would be romance, drugs, even gunplay.
Gunplay. Some things are just timeless.
A bidding war for the script between Warner Brothers and New Regency ensued, with New Regency eventually securing the rights, and Heikkinen was given $525,000 for writing the script, along with 1% of the soundtrack royalties and 5% of merchandise sales. Journeyman director Allan Moyle, whose most high-profile film to date was the Christian Slater vehicle Pump Up the Volume, was selected to helm the movie, and a slew of young actors were cast in the ensemble, including quite a few future stars.
I haven't seen this many stars being born since the Orion Nebula. I'm a nerd.
Filmed in Wilmington, North Carolina between October and December of 1994, with one sequence being filmed in Atlantic City, New Jersey, the movie was given a release date of September 22nd, 1995. Post-production was not smooth, as Moyle was not given final cut privileges and clashed with the studio over their notes and proposed cuts. The finished product was about 40 minutes shorter than Moyle's preferred cut and removed several characters and subplots entirely. For example, the movie was originally supposed to cover 2 days in time, but it was condensed to be only one day, April 8th, aka Rex Manning Day. The studio was losing faith in the film, and instead of being released in about 1,250 theaters in September, as was originally intended, it was only released in about 87, with plans to expand it later if the reception was positive.
The reception was positive, though.
The reception was not positive, though, with most critics hating it, as it sits at 31% on Rotten Tomatoes. The movie came and went quietly, but its story wasn't done yet, as it would go on to develop a huge cult following in the years since, with Rex Manning Day being a popular holiday among fans, and even a musical based on the film currently being in development.
I could see it as a musical.
Yeah.
It may actually come out better.
Carol Heikkinen is very much involved in the musical, too. She's giving updates to it on her Twitter, because it does take place in more or less one location with a couple different rooms.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you just meet a bunch of characters and they sing the thing that they're into, and then there's room to highlight all the music, because it is a jukebox film. It's constantly throwing soundtrack cuts at you, and they're all pretty good.
Yeah, the soundtrack for this movie is phenomenal, and I like what the movie does by having a lot of the music played being didactic in nature. Somebody's playing it over the store PA, and they usually give a little intro line or something to kind of explain the choice in music, or at least the character who's picking the song. You can kind of draw conclusions about their character and what they're into and what they're like based on what they play or what they veto.
Right.
It's a cool little shorthand for developing some characters, because the script doesn't always do a super great job of developing the character.
It's tough, and we'll have to get into what the script does and doesn't do, but I think what you went over in the story of the production here is that with 40 minutes cut from the director's cut, removing some entire subplots, removing some characters entirely, taking a whole day out of the timeline of the story, we can't put too much blame on the writer and the director, because we don't know what they had in there. There's some comments that I'm going to want to make about what the story does and doesn't do, but I'm like, who's responsible for it not doing the things I wanted it to do? Maybe not the writer, maybe not the director, maybe whoever had final cut and just stripped some things out.
It does feel weird that we never got a more comprehensive release of it, right?
Yeah, this sounds like with becoming a cult fan favorite would be a great case to put out that director's cut.
Yeah, I wonder where that footage is and what it's doing. But I mentioned a lot of future stars were in this movie. A lot of future stars, even bigger than the ones in this movie, were almost in this movie too, which will be exciting to talk about. I mean, what a collection of young actors this movie got and almost had. One of them was even cast and went to North Carolina to film and then got high and went home. I'll tell you who after we go through the story.
Stay tuned for that. The movie certainly doesn't suffer from the cast. It's a likable gang. You might like certain people more or less, but they didn't fall down there. And it's got a lot of good moments. It just, some things don't hang together. Some of the major plot lines and story are insufficiently established, so that you end up being kind of confused and only kind of sorting out what the message of the movie is very late. Not in a fun mystery revealed way, but like in a, oh, you should have told me that before, that this guy was, that I was supposed to like this guy. And that it just leads you down some roads that are unsatisfying because of what they left out.
Yeah, the first time I watched this movie, I guess who ends up being, if not the hero, one of the heroes, I've hated him as much as I've hated any character since Rocco.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Saints. Like, he infuriated me for the entire runtime. We'll get into that more when we go over the actual story. It'll become apparent very quickly. He is the driving force for most of the drama in this movie, and he has no remorse about his actions at all, apparently.
Yeah, we're going to have to dive deep.
Why don't we get into it? You want to walk us through the first leg of the movie just so I could go on my rant about this fucking asshole?
Yeah, here we go. Empire Records is a beloved independent record store that employs a bunch of angsty teens and one slightly older manager named Joe, played by Anthony LaPaglia, who looks after them all. One day, a clerk named Lucas finds out the store is about to be sold to a national chain. Oh no, so he steals the day's cash receipts of about $9,000 and takes them to Atlantic City to try to parlay it into enough money to prevent the sale of the store. But he loses it all and comes back empty-handed. Joe finds out and doesn't want to turn Lucas in, but he's in a bind with the store's owner, Mitchell. Meanwhile, here's the deal with the other kids who work in the store. AJ is psyching himself up to tell Corey, played by Liv Tyler, that he's in love with her. Meanwhile, Corey tells her friend Gina, played by Renee Zellweger, that Corey's planning to lose her virginity to her childhood crush Rex Manning, an aging pop star who's making an in-store appearance that afternoon. Then Deb shows up for work, having just survived a suicide attempt, and shaves her head to reflect her troubled state of mind.
First off, kudos to Deb for being such a dedicated employee that she literally just tried to kill herself.
Fucking trooper, man.
And she shows up to work anyway. And she's not even like, she doesn't have a customer-facing job. It seems like she's doing paperwork most of the time she's there. So she probably could have taken the day and been okay.
She probably could. With the number of people that work at the store, like you said, like they are
15 fucking employees at any given time.
They're overstaffed, but they're raking it in, man. I guess you need a lot of register clerks because
that's the most unrealistic part of this movie, because $9,000 is 3 months of what a record store would earn now. It's tough going out there for CDs and DVDs and Blu-rays. Vinyl is having a bit of a comeback because I sit in front of my vinyl wall.
I managed to avoid ever working retail in a place like that. So I'm like, is that realistic? Did they just throw that number out there? How many CDs do they sell a day? 1,000?
No, I think it's realistic. I came much later to retail work. I worked at Circuit City in the late aughts. We were still selling a ton of DVDs and Blu-rays and CDs, and we had not the selection that a place solely dedicated to those things would have. And I used to go to the Wall and FYE, Tower Records, Sam Goody, and just spend all my money. Like any allowance I had, or later on when I had part-time jobs as a teenager, all my money went to like media and alcohol. But it's,
no, that makes sense.
I think it tracks that it would be that popular. It's just jarring to see now.
As old as I am, I actually forgot that you used to have to cough up money to hear music.
I find it interesting that you gave some characters, you stated their actor or actress, but other ones you were like, nah, fuck Johnny Whitworth. Whitworth? I don't even remember. So I guess your point is valid.
Point made, yeah. I mean, Renee Zellweger and Liv Tyler, those are the big names that lift right off the bill here and into big Hollywood. Anthony LaPaglia has had a great career, and so I named him. I feel like he's a known name, but those other names, they had their runs. A lot of these people can look kind of familiar, but kind of pass you by.
I think a lot of millennial women are going to be very upset with you for passing over Robin Tunney, because The Craft was a big deal for people of a certain age, especially women of a certain age, even though I really enjoyed The Craft.
Yeah, please forgive me. I am craft ignorant, but I really liked her performance. Robin Tunney, she was great. She stood out to me, even not knowing her. I'm like, this is a good actress in this role because she doesn't have a ton to work with, and she really comes across as real.
She's another one who's had a good career, but if you had asked me in like the year 2000 if I thought she was going to be like a huge star, I would have said absolutely. She really seemed like she had everything going for her. But again, she's had a very solid career. It's not like she's been wanting for work. I think she did a lot of long runs on TV shows, which can eat into your ability to do movies and whatnot.
Especially at the time she came out.
First things first, let's get right into the store itself, because the store is awesome.
Yeah.
The set they built for the store is super cool. If it was in my area, I would be there all the time. I would probably apply for a job there constantly until they hired me or told me to fuck off forever. They did a really good job dressing this up to look like a place where you would want to be if you were like a teenager or early 20s into music.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we'll recommend this movie, apart from its small charms of its actors and its moments, is that the whole 90s record store vibe is really strong in this one. Just like the little listening booths, the upstairs classical section, all the shit on the walls, everything. It just takes you back.
Now that we've got some of the good out of the way, let's get on to the bane of my existence as it relates to this movie. And I'm talking, of course, about Lucas, played by Rory Cochrane. I did not like this character. I found him incredibly obnoxious. First of all, he He just commits grand larceny, doubles his money with one roll of the dice. Wait, if you roll 7, what do you get back?
Does that pay 2 to 1?
I think so. I don't know shit about craps. Actually, the person who recommended this movie to me for the podcast once had a party where they had like tables and dealers there, but no money. You played for like raffle tickets and you got prizes at the end. And I was like, that is the best idea ever, because it's so intimidating to try to learn a new casino game in a casino, because there's a lot of unspoken rule that you can, if you fuck somebody else's bet up, they're going to be pissed at you. Yes. So I always like just shy away from them because I don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to make anybody mad.
Especially craps, because it's so social, right? The dice go around the table and people are screaming at each other at the top of their lungs. You're like, I can't get involved in that. I'm not ready.
And at that party, I learned how to play craps. The dealers were there. They were very patient. Nobody else got mad. And then I had 9 Maker's Marks and ginger ales and I forgot it all.
Erased. Oh, well.
So yeah, he steals $9,000 from Joe. Well, from the store. It ends up affecting Joe personally in a bigger way than we might have anticipated. He wins. So he's got $18,000. He can take $9,000 for himself, put the other $9,000 back, and no one will be the wiser. But what does he do? He lets it ride. Does it again. Loses it all. Loses 18 grand. Rolls a snake eyes. And then he just doesn't feel bad about it. Like he gets real weird and spacey. Like he's trying to be like a weird little monk dispensing wisdoms.
The problem is we didn't know him before. He might have been exactly that weird the whole time, which is the problem with this whole section of the movie. They do a whole movie in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Imagine someone pitching you this premise. One young man will take extraordinary steps to save his friends, his way of life, and the place he loves more than anything from corporate takeover. And you're like, okay, I get that that's a thing, but they acted that out at the beginning of the movie, the first 5 minutes. And then they're like, oh, maybe we'll get around to actually introducing you to who this guy is, who his friends are, what kind of relationships he has with those friends, with this place that he cares so much that he committed this grand larceny to try to save it. But no, because then he goes catatonic and only speaks in Zen riddles the rest of the movie. So you don't even see, like, why did he do this? What about these people that he loved? He only talks to them in this off-putting way the rest of the time. So it doesn't really make sense.
And he's weird and cryptic and borderline antagonistic to Joe. Like, he's so vague, it feels like he's antagonizing him when Joe asks him, like, why did you do this? What was your plan? What are you going to do now? What am I supposed to do with you? You're going to try to pay me back? And he just never answers any of his questions, really. He just says things like, don't worry, Joe. You're a fantastic manager. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? How does that help me now?
And we'll get to it because we also don't know what to think about Joe, which is my big problem with the movie. Because I got over Lucas once I realized what was wrong with Joe. But I got the feeling that they were trying to do this Ferris Bueller kind of a thing where, like, the hero is this young person who's preternaturally wise and almost supernatural in his wisdom and his trickster. Because actually, as he walks into the casino in Atlantic City, he calls out the number that's going to come up on roulette as he walks by the table, casually says 22, and 22 comes up. So there's some suggestion that magic is happening or that he's blessed or something weird is happening. And then he falls on his face, but he still acts like he's a sage of some sort.
He's got it all under control. Yeah. He never loses control.
Which really distances him from what the story could have been, that he's a fuck up. That's the whole story of the store. The kids are all troubled, not necessarily troubled in a heavy sense. They're all kids. They're going through their teenage years. They all have issues.
They're troubled in the way white kids in the 90s were troubled.
Exactly.
You know, like...
But they took it away from Lucas and they made him just a weirdo. And you have to kind of hint, you're like, maybe he's just acting this way because of his real problems. And Joe knows that. And that's why Joe's acting that way towards him. But you have to really volunteer a lot of your own stuff to that part of the story when they could have made him like be real for a minute and go, yeah, this is a kid. He made a terrible decision because he was super scared, and let him live that. But no, they don't let him live that. They make him be a Bugs Bunny trickster the rest of the time, including giving him the power to run faster than shoplifters and circle them around the block, do weird Bugs Bunny shit.
Yeah, the movie veers between like real drama and slapstick pretty willy-nilly. But yeah, let's talk about Joe a little bit. The poor man's Andy Garcia. I could not stop seeing Andy Garcia every time I looked at him. They have a very like, especially with the hair, I don't know.
Yeah, I think like the hair does add to the Garcia-ness of him.
He's like a beefier Garcia, but Anthony LaPaglia was 36 when this movie came out. So I just assumed I was placing Joe kind of in that same range.
Okay.
So these kids are literally like half his age, and he's trying to be a manager, but also trying to be cool and friendly with them and help them out, which I can imagine is tough for him. But what was your take on Joe?
My problem is, like, your description of him makes a lot of sense. Here's a guy who's like a little bit older than this group of kids, still young enough to be hip. Like, he's not the older nerd dad.
Thank you.
He's like the cool guy. But the problem is they don't let him warm up until halfway through the movie. So at the beginning, he's an antagonist. You think Lucas is the hero because we've been focusing on him and he's been talking straight into the camera half the time for the first 10 minutes of the movie. And Joe seems like a stern, scary authority figure. And then they reinforce that because they keep the secret from him. All the other kids in the store know that Lucas lost the money and they don't tell Joe. So you're like, okay, Joe is not their friend. and he is not the cool uncle that's helping these kids out. He's an authority figure that we have to keep a distance from, but that's not what they want to do. And by the end, they let on that he's actually a good guy, that he's the one who cares passionately about these kids and has lifted up all these troubled kids. But it's a real shame that they didn't do that earlier on, because the two guys who are at the center of the main story that's moving this movie forward, they're both keeping you on the outside. Lucas because he's being a weirdo, and Joe because they're making him be the bad guy instead of being the hero.
I didn't read it that way. The only time I was unsure of whether Joe was going to be a good guy or a bad guy as far as the movie's concerned was in those early scenes when Lucas is lounging in his office and Gina, the Renee Zellweger character, is talking to him like, don't touch his beer, don't touch his drumsticks, count the money twice. I was like, oh, maybe he is like a hard ass. But then once you meet him, he's kind of got an easy breezy way about him, I thought, even though someone just stole $10,000 from him. Yeah. Like, I thought his reaction to that was pretty reasonable, and maybe even more reasonable than Lucas deserved, given how little remorse he had for it.
It totally was. I couldn't compute that. So I'm like, if you take that in and you go, there's some reason he's not calling the cops right away, he must be a good dude. That's good. That's the correct thing to conclude. I couldn't conclude that because I was cueing more off the way he was yelling at him and the way they were keeping secrets from him. And so I'm like, oh, I'm not sure he's sympathetic, but he is acting weird. Like, why isn't he calling the cops? Is it just because he feels like he fucked up? He told the real boss man, the owner, Mitchell, that he had the money and he didn't. So there's one of those misunderstanding things that seems a little contrived. I liked Anthony LaPaglia from the start because he's likable and he doesn't actually get nasty, but I was so much happier with him when he became...
He does kind of later. He beats him up.
Okay, there's one exception. We'll get to that part because he flips it on us right after we decide that we like him. But also all of this is the kind of thing that could be the victim of missing scenes. A little scene here at the beginning where Joe got to be himself and you do a save the cat moment or something positive that showed you he was a good guy and a guy you should relate to would have gone just such a long way for me, but I didn't get it till later.
That's fair. I didn't even think of the edit in terms of the weird characterization of some people because we can only judge what we see, but that makes a lot of sense. I bet there was some more backstory laid down for Lucas's insane behavior and Joe's extremely measured response to it most of the time. Well, let's talk about some of the rest of the ensemble because we singled out some people, but this is a big cast with a lot of faces you recognize, maybe even if you don't know their names, like Ethan Embry. He made himself a little cottage industry of coming of age films around this time because he was in this. I think this was the first of the group. Okay. And then he had That Thing You Do like a year later, which he said was difficult because he developed a massive crush on Liv Tyler during the filming of this movie. And then he had to go be in That Thing You Do with her and still have a massive crush on her. She's Liv Tyler, so I don't think it worked out. And then he was in Can't Hardly Wait, which is like a hardcore coming of age genre classic for people my age. So he built himself a nice little career doing stuff like that, but he's had a really interesting turn to like more of a grizzled older actor. I first really came to enjoy his performances in a Showtime show called Brotherhood, which was like a real gritty crime drama about Providence, Rhode Island, Irish mob. And he played a detective who goes undercover. And it's a really like dark show. And he was really good in it as this cop spiraling out of control. He's using drugs, getting drunk every day. He's trying to take down the Irish mob, but he's compromised a little bit. It was a really good show. It was only 2 seasons, maybe 3. If you can find that it's on Showtime. Cool. Recommended to our listeners. But you did not like the character of Mark.
No, I did not have the benefit of liking Ethan Embry coming into this because I think I was vaguely aware of those other movies that he was in. Didn't see either of those. And man, Mark is weird and disturbing.
He's a weird guy.
I mean, he's the goofy bonehead kid. He seems like the youngest person working at the store, but he's what's a generous and not offensive way to say this? He's a doofus. He makes these horrible, goofy grins after everything he says. And I'm like, is there something off about this guy? Is he supposed to be all there? I don't even know how to say it in a way that's not offensive. I think he was supposed to be
developmentally disabled in a way, but no, I think he was trying to be like Spicoli, but he just was a young actor, not up to the task. Say what you want about Sean Penn. He's probably at least marginally a better actor than Ethan Embry. And I like Ethan Embry. I think he was trying to be like a burnt out metalhead, pothead guy who's just like lost some brain cells from partying or whatever, but he just didn't have the repertoire to pull it off in a convincing way. And it ended up just being a little much. He accentuated certain parts of the character that he should have toned down and the balance was all off. I don't know. I agree that it did seem like there was something off about him.
There's some choices certainly that he made as a young actor that you go, ooh, that was not a good choice. But then a lot of it being, especially that he was young, I got to point to the director and be like, why did you encourage him to be be this way in this role.
I think you're right to call out the direction a little bit. This movie is directed workmanlike. Like, there's not a lot of flair here. I don't think Allan Moyle is fooling anybody into thinking he's Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese. He doesn't have a lot of camera tricks or flashy things. Like, there's not a lot of flourish.
Yeah.
Like TV movie directing is how I would describe it. But he got good actors in most of the roles, so maybe his shortcomings as a director aren't as evident because these people were able to put in good performances for the most part, maybe with the exception of Ethan Embry. So then some of the other characters, we have Burko, played by Coyote Shivers, who was apparently Liv Tyler's stepdad when the movie was made, which is weird.
It is weird because they're supposed to be contemporaries here. We looked up the story. Do you want to talk about how that happened?
Yeah, so Coyote Shivers, which, by the way, is like the fucking coolest name I've ever heard. He's 56 years old. He was married to BB Buell, who is Liv Tyler's mom, who is 69 now. So there's a 12-year age gap. So he was 35. She was 47, right? Did we come up with those numbers?
I'm going to go with
it. They were married from 1992 to 1999. Coyote Shivers, for the record, apparently not a great dude. There's some allegations on his Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Dropping allegedly in there.
Allegedly.
But we don't want to celebrate him or anything. But he is playing just a regular employee at the store with his stepdaughter at the time, Liv Tyler, who's like a high school student in the movie, which is just weird.
Yeah, he's obviously much younger than her dad, but it's this legacy, I guess, of rock and roll lifestyles that collide, that this young sort of wannabe rock star married this lady who was the model who previously had a baby with a much bigger rock star, Steven Tyler. So I guess it comes around.
Also, for the record, Burko doesn't need to be in this movie at all. You know, there's no reason for him to be in this movie. He's just another employee, and we have plenty of them. And there's 3 guys now that are clerks at the store with like black kind of long hair. No. Enough is enough. We got to start narrowing these parts down, start combining some of these characters into composites. Then we get Zellweger. This is a nice early Zellweger role. She's kind of playing against type. I feel like she made a career playing like a little mousier, maybe a little more subdued. I don't want to say a pushover, but like she's never been the most assertive in her big roles. Like Bridget Jones, she's very clumsy and maybe not very self-assured most of the time.
But it's not like a real stretch. Like she plays this character and inhabits it quite well, and the energy that she brings to it feels real.
Yeah, I really liked her in this role. I like her in most things I see her in. She's just a good actor, so it's not a stretch. Liv Tyler, as a comparison, though, she does some weird things in this movie, and maybe it's effective in mimicking like teenage mood swings, but she's got like some very dramatic movements when she's saying her lines. She kind of like flops her arms around. She's got no joints. Did you notice that? Am I making this up?
I think I know what you mean. I recognized it in particular at the very end when she's
on the roof with AJ.
Yeah, when she's swooning, she gives over to this very emotional moment, and she's like, whoa, this is a goofy teenage girl that just decided to get super dramatic. But it works as that, because like, I don't know how actually young she was in this, but she plays young very well in this, and all the characters kind of do. And that's kind of the excuse that this movie has at every point where we go, hey, this didn't really make sense, or this behavior didn't seem motivated correctly. It's always excusable if you go, these are some dumbass teenagers, right? They're just doing something dumb. And it explains everything, which is actually charming. You go, oh, actually, the movie doesn't try to elevate them all to movie characters with perfect lines of dialogue in their mouth at all times. They just do dumb shit, and you go, oh, some dumb teens.
Yeah, script is good at evoking the lack of self-confidence you have at that age, but like the desire to seem really secure. I guess the writer was writing from personal experience. So
did you not feel the same way about AJ? He's another one of the characters who has a real story to him. He has a want at the beginning, just like Liv Tyler's Corey does.
He has a story. That's the thing, though. Who's the hero of this movie? Is AJ the hero of this movie? He gets the big love story.
Yeah, there's an argument that AJ and Corey are the two heroes of a romance because they're both coming in with big bad ideas about how to find love, and then they find love together at the end.
But I find AJ pretty unlikable throughout the movie. He kind of berates Deb when she walks out of the bathroom after shaving her head. He's kind of aggressive with her, not like concerned, almost like angry. And I don't know if maybe the actor wasn't up to the task of playing concerned, but like a panicked way.
I'm with you on that.
But he seems like he's accosting her.
They did not handle that little subplot very well. There's two moments. She shows up to work. She's still got a head of hair. She goes in the bathroom in the back and shaves her hair off. She comes out and everyone's shocked by the hair, but they're more shocked by the bandages on her wrists. And the first two characters that confront her about it, first one's AJ and then is Gina, who's kind of a jerk.
They have an antagonistic relationship, though. It's been established that they don't get along, so that makes a little more sense.
They have a bad relationship, but both these characters come across like, oh, you tried suicide? Fuck you, you stupid asshole. How dare you? And it's like, whoa, what is that what they meant to communicate how these kids tackled that difficult issue? Or were they trying for something else and it just came off wrong? Like you said, maybe more the latter if we give them a little credit.
Yeah, and then he has some reactions to things later on in the movie that also made me dislike him, which we'll get into as they come up. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't find his character added much value to the movie.
Yeah, he has kind of a Saved by the Bell quality to him. He's like a daytime TV hero, a handsome boy with a bunch of energy and some emotions.
I was going to say Jordan Catalano from My So-Called Life, which was the Jared Leto role. But yeah, Saved by the Bell works too. He'd be the kid who comes in like season 4 because they're like, we need some new blood. Right. And he's like a little brooding. He's into cool music. So the girls start liking him and the other guys get jealous. I could see that subplot.
That's AJ.
All right. We covered the soundtrack. We covered the store. I guess, are we ready to jump into the middle section?
Yeah. Tell us what happens next.
All right. Joe continues to deceive the store owner Mitchell to buy time while he figures out how to cover the missing money. Lucas catches a snotty young shoplifter who calls himself Warren Beatty, and the cops take the angry kid away. Corey throws herself at the pop star Rex Manning, but at the last moment realizes it's not what she wants and she can't go through with the sex. Moments later, when AJ professes his love to Corey, she rebuffs him and he takes it badly. Corey insults Gina for her sexual promiscuity, and an angry Gina decides she'll go ahead and seduce Rex Manning herself. Joe reveals that he was saving up to buy out Mitchell and prevent the store from becoming a music town, but now he'll have to give up that plan and use that money to make Mitchell whole.
A lot of plot in the middle, as there usually is. We always say that.
We're always surprised for some reason. We've done this 75 times.
We read Act 2 and we're like, wow, a lot of shit happened. Yeah, it did. That was the whole meat of the movie.
In the middle part of the movie when the plot happens. But yeah.
Should we tackle Warren first or Rex Manning? Two of the troublesome characters in this.
Let's tackle Warren first. So Warren is this kid. First of all, is he old enough to work in this store? Did they ever say how old he is? They say he's a minor repeatedly.
He might need a work permit. He looks young.
If you told me 15, I'd be like, maybe. But anyway, he likes a few things. He likes guns. He likes Axl Rose a lot, which didn't ring true to me for his age and when the movie takes place.
Right.
And he likes shoplifting.
He loves shoplifting, or he's dedicated to it.
He takes it seriously. He might not love it, but he's certainly dedicated to it. So he gets caught stealing. I originally said you could cut the Warren subplot and the movie would be no worse off for it, but you had an interesting angle on it, which I've come around to. You think that the way he's treated by the staff and by Joe later specifically colors in maybe some more background on Lucas and his relationship with Joe, right?
At the very end, or when this plot wraps up, you realize it has a lot of meaning. At first, you're like, this is just a thing that happens in the store. Or sometimes you get a shoplifter when Lucas puts on his sneakers so that he can set up chasing him around the block and cutting him off as he tries to escape in a strangely comic interlude. But yeah, it seems like just a sort of action diversion. But actually, if you do my version of the movie, which is, this is a movie about Joe, the store that he runs, and this family of kids that he's built, that he's brought together. He's being this figure in their lives, and that's what he does. And Lucas ends up being the older version of Warren, right? He's like, I used to be you. I don't know if he did the same thing, but now that I think of it, he has a penchant for stealing shit.
He does. So Joe loves giving these young thieves another chances. Is he going to lose like 15 grand in a couple of years to Warren? You know, what are you doing? Hedge your bets here, Joe. Start hiring some honest people after a while. I did want to briefly justify my Axl thing because they ask him, who's your favorite musician? He says Axl. We assume he means Rose. But Use Your Illusion Part 2 came out in 1991. They hadn't released a full-length album in 4 years. So this kid was probably like 10 the last time Guns N' Roses released a real album. And it was Use Your Illusion Part 2. And he's like, fuck yeah, that's my favorite band. Get out of here.
He's not hip enough to be a cool record store kid.
Even like Pearl Jam would have made more sense, or Stone Temple Pilots in 1995.
How about Jane's Addiction? Been Caught Stealing would have been a perfect song for this kid.
Nailed it. That might have been too on the nose. I don't know. But all right. So it's time to talk about Rex Manning. The movie, I think, is trying to make us hate him, and sometimes justifiably so. But like early on, I kind of felt bad for him. He's a washed up rock star. He's like a corny pop singer. Everybody in the store treats him like shit. They don't think he's cool. He got a haircut he doesn't like, and everyone's kind of pointing it out to him. It's not until later he does something that like justifies us hating him.
Yeah.
Because he's kind of reasonable with, they're like, oh, do you want like a special chair? Do you want to sell? He's like, no, this is fine. Like, I don't care. He's not like a diva.
He's this threat that he's going to be gross because he looks gross. He's wearing frilly silk pirate shirts. He looks like a total douche. But then, like, you're right, there's little moments where he's not that bad. He's just like a guy who's living his career because he kind of knows. Even the customers who will line up to get his autograph, they continually insult him. They're like, I came here for my mom. I don't know who the fuck you are.
He's a punching bag the entire day. And maybe there was some stuff cut that makes him seem like more of a dick, at least in the early going. He does some stuff later on that is sleazy and maybe helps, fill in for why everyone hates him so much. But they didn't know that he was like that at the time.
No.
And neither did we. So I was just kind of feeling bad for him in the section.
even his manager or whoever she is, Debbie Mazar, who plays his publicist, his representative, who's with him for this in-store appearance, she quits before he even does anything really bad because she just gets kind of like embarrassed.
She gets teased about it.
Yeah.
She's like, you're right. He's not that cool.
He's not cool. It's not that. It's one thing to quit after he did something that offended me and I couldn't excuse, but she just quits because they're like, he's so corny. And she's like, you're right. I quit. I'm out of here.
And then she just hangs around the store for the rest of the day. We come to find out she's got the hots for Joe, but I didn't know that at the time. So we were trying to come up with real world comparisons for Rex Manning. And my two were Neil Diamond and Daryl Hall, but then you beat me with your references, probably because you're much older than I am.
I have that over you. But the Neil Diamond is great because he certainly wore some silk pirate shirts in his day with big open collars. So that's a good reference. His history references made me think of David Cassidy, right? Because they keep talking about he was on some family TV show in his youth. David Cassidy is famous, of course, from the Partridge Family, started as a fake band on a TV show and then became an actual sort of teen idol pop star and then went back to being an actor in his later years, I believe. So I'm like, okay, that feels like a Partridge Family reference. And then they show his music video. They show quite a bit of it and they're totally doing a Robert Palmer thing because it's women in tight mini dresses with slick back hair and the guitar is quite familiar. I wasn't sure if it was more Addicted to Love or his cover of Get It On, but they're totally doing a Robert Palmer thing. And I looked him up and by the time he had those hits, he was already from an older generation of classic rock where he didn't make it big his first time around and then he made it big in the 80s with these poppy rock singles.
Yeah, I think those are both really good observations. They probably pulled from a few different references to come up with his character. But interestingly enough, you said we see a lot of the music video. They shot like a full 5.5 minute music video for this song.
Oh, okay.
They had the day and whatever second unit director they sent out to do it just made a whole music video, which is pretty cool.
That explains why they were willing to just put it full screen. It's not just playing in the background. For a minute, they put it on screen and show you a whole verse and chorus.
And the song sucks. That was by design. You can't blame Rex Manning or the filmmakers for that because they wanted it to suck.
Yeah.
And then the Joe and Lucas conflict is heating up at this point. You mentioned Joe is giving Mitchell basically ripped up pieces of paper to deposit at the bank in place of the $9,000. I'm like freaking out in my own head at this point. Like I'm getting secondhand anxiety just watching this shit unfold.
Yeah, that's like a sitcom plot point, right? You freak out. What do I do? Oh, put some paper in the bag and give it to the boss. Never come clean. Always make it worse for yourself kind of plot points.
And of course, it all works out in the end. But
it does.
That's just how life is too.
They let this, we'll get to that. They let the steam out of that so easily for a plot line that they built up with so much anxiety for us. We had to deal with this idea. I was like, why is Joe being like this? He's setting up for an absolute breakdown with Mitchell at the end. And then by the time they get to that face-off, Joe has absolutely the upper hand and Mitchell just folds his cards like nothing. And none of that ever comes back up to bite him.
It's a pretty breezy movie. I don't think it was trying to be like a real tense, like heist thriller, but it does let everyone off the hook remarkably easily. You could have gone a little harder on it. Now, this is also the section where your Mark hatred becomes more justified.
Mark really loses me here. So he's acting real goofy, and I'm like, oh, I can't take this guy, but maybe he's just like that. There's kind of a happy moment, and the employees are going back out into the store, and he's got a little feather duster, and he's going around the store, and he comes up behind a young woman, a girl, who's got her eyes closed, and she's got headphones on. She's at one of the listening stations, appreciating some maybe classical music because she's dressed as a ballerina, and he's standing behind her, and then he leans around her and puckers up. He's about to kiss her, a woman who hasn't even seen that he exists, that he's standing right behind her. She accidentally deflects that horrible attempt when she turns and brings up her hand and smacks him in the face, and he kind of plays it off. And she goes back to enjoying her music, and then she kicks one foot up in a ballet move, and he catches her foot and holds onto her foot and plants a kiss on her bare foot. And I'm like, dude, not cool, not funny, not cool. And this character is just laughing all this off, and it's just like, oh my God, he's a real creep.
Mark is in his Pepe Le Pew arc in this section of the movie. He's doing some real sketchy Pepe Le Pew type shit. But we've seen him like making out with a painting on the side of a building. Who was that?
That's true.
What musician was that?
I thought it was Madonna, and then I later found out I think it was Gloria Estefan.
It was Gloria Estefan, yeah.
He humps a mural. Yeah, he's a gross little horn dog.
He's a little horn dog. There's not much more to add to it. Your disgust with this scene is justified.
It's like if you're cutting 40 minutes, Mark is not even the main character. Just maybe throw that piece out. We have to shoot it.
I think my affection for Ethan Embry colors my perception of his role in this movie more than anything, but he doesn't need to be in the movie at all.
Maybe he'll save the day at the end by actually turning out to be brilliant and coming up with the idea that saves the store, but we'll have to find out when we get to the third act.
Maybe in the third act he'll. So now this is when you can start debating if Rex Manning truly is a bad guy because he is getting his lunch and Corey wants to bring him his lunch. I looked it up, by the way. Liv Tyler was the age of her character. She was 18 when this movie was made. And Rex Manning is not 18. He is much older than that. Maxwell Caulfield Caulfield. He's 62 now. He was born in 59. So he's 36 as well. He's the same age as Joe.
Okay.
So he's literally twice her age.
Yeah.
Which is too large of an age gap. This is weird. Like he does, are you sure you want to do this? And she's like, yes, I definitely do.
Yeah.
He tries to do the right thing, but the right thing to do would have been said like, I'm very flattered, but no, thank you. You're much too young for me to sleep with you.
Get out of here. Yeah. But you're right. He does again soften his own edges here where he's like, oh, I see what you're doing there. Are you sure you want to do this? This is not necessary. And then she's like, yes, I'm sure I want you. And she's taking off her clothes in front of him. And then he goes, all right, rock and roll. unzips his pants. And I guess she didn't think he would have a penis because as soon as that bad boy comes out, she's like, I have made a huge mistake. And she gets out of there, which I don't blame her. It was a painful moment for her.
It was painful. And the movie plays it pretty straight. It's not played for laughs. To its credit, it's treated with the gravity it deserves. But yeah, like that's kind of the first bad thing he's done the whole movie. I'm just trying to reckon with my theory that he's not such a bad guy after all. But yeah, he should have kept it in his pants there, literally.
Yeah.
Maybe talked her down, just been like, you don't want your first time to be with like a washed up rock star anyway. She's a virgin. That's been a plot point. She wants to lose her virginity to Rex Manning. It's not just a thing. She wants to sleep with him. So he could have handled that with more grace. And it's not like he's above sleeping with an 18-year-old because I believe Gina is the same age as Corey in the movie. And we'll find out later that he has no qualms.
He proves he was ready to go all the
way.
And
then another thing with AJ that bothers me is the way he handles it when he goes to profess his love for Corey and she's just had this very traumatic experience. And she's more just, not now. Can we talk about this later?
Exactly.
She's not saying no. She does say, I think we have a good friendship and I don't want to ruin that. But she's also just saying, I really can't deal with this right now. Like maybe we could talk about this another time.
Yeah, she is in a real state of distress. And AJ's being totally blind to that. He's freaking out. He's got himself worked up so badly. Like he had to give himself a very specific time of day when he was going to say this thing. And so he's been working himself up since 9 a.m. till 1:46 p.m. or whatever his time was.
1:37, I believe.
Thank you. So he's in a weird state. She's in a terrible state. And you'd think they say that these two have been like best buds for a while. And that's why it's weird to her that there's actually a romantic love angle to it when they're just the closest of friends, that he wouldn't see her in this state and be like, what the fuck happened? Tell me what's wrong. I've never seen you like this, because she looks just awful. But he can't see it because he's blinded by love. And he also, when she's like, I can't deal with you right now, he takes it very badly in this very immature, childish way, which is always frustrating, but also like, oh, I guess that's what kids are supposed to do.
He never uses the term friend zone, but like he was definitely thinking about it. Maybe it wasn't a term yet in 1995, but that's really the vibe he was giving off at this point in the movie. And I think you put this note in there. If you don't want to be my girlfriend, then I don't want anything to do with you.
I thought you wrote that, but I'm with you on that. He gets
maybe I wrote that note, but we're just aligned. Yeah, he has this like thing of, oh, if you're not going to date me, even though we're the best of friends, go fuck yourself, which is weird and unfair and shitty. And it just reinforces my theory that AJ is secretly worse than Rex Manning.
That's quite a theory. The thing is, this happens to the best people. We saw this happen to J.R.R. Tolkien in the Tolkien movie. His girlfriend got told, maybe we can't get together right now or I'll lose all my financial standing in the world. And she did one of those, well, then fuck you. We'll never talk to you again.
Well, they ended up together. I assume AJ and Corey are living in Cambridge to this day, happily married. No, their relationship seems extremely volatile.
Yeah, it's young puppy love. We'll get to how it wraps up, but who knows where that's going to go.
And then Corey just lashing out at everybody. She can't lash out at AJ. She can't lash out at Rex Manning. So she just starts picking on Gina in a very mean-spirited way. I felt really bad for Gina in this scene when they're at the pizza parlor. Just trying to have some lunch and she's just calling her a whore for no reason.
Yeah, she's saying, I've been this good girl, virgin, bookworm. And she's like, I tried to be like you, my friend, Gina. And look where that got me. It totally fucked me. It terrified me when a man pulled out his penis in front of me. And okay, yeah, that's terrifying. But yeah, she really decides to use this opportunity to just come down on her friend's lifestyle and shit on her.
It doesn't paint Corey in a great light. But again, I don't necessarily think it's inaccurate. Teenagers lashing out at the wrong person because they don't know how to process their emotions. I think that rings true.
We use our old excuse. It's just dumb teenagers again. It explains the scene. And it unlocks the next thing that Gina does, which we'll get to shortly.
Right. I don't want to dwell on this too much. And then everyone finds out that Music Town is taken over in the scene. And then Joe says, I don't think there's any dancing allowed at Music Town. Which I was like, where is Music Town? Is it in Footloose?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this?
Don't tell Kevin Bacon. But he says it in sort of a grand speech, which would have been, again, more fun if he was more in the center of the story. But everyone in the store is dancing, having a good time. He's like, I hate to burst your bubble, but in 1 week, this store is turning into a music town. Town. And I don't think they allow dancing. And it's not even like Music Town hates dance. It's the fact that he qualified it. I don't think they allow dancing in Music Town. It's like, we're going to check in with them because maybe they'll let us dance once in a while.
Their rules and regulations are lengthy, so maybe he just hadn't gotten to that section yet.
Oh, that's true. It was a long list. He handed it out. No visible tattoos, no piercings. What is this, Amish Music Town? They're still selling records to people, right?
It is bizarre, but that was a thing in retail. I think it's a lot harder to enforce those kind of rules nowadays.
Okay.
But yeah, there were definitely places I worked at where you had to wear long sleeves if you had tattoos on your arms.
I see.
It rings true for the big chain coming and taking over.
That's a good point. Times have changed.
For the better in that way, in some ways. But planet's also dying. So now that I've depressed everyone, are you ready to walk us through the end of the movie?
Here we go. So Gina is caught having sex with Rex Manning in the back room, which leads to a huge blow up with Corey, in which Gina calls out Corey's abuse of amphetamines, which she uses to help her study. AJ then gets in a physical scuffle with Rex Manning, who leaves the store without completing his autograph signing. Then the shoplifter kid returns to the store armed with a gun. But once the situation is diffused, Joe offers to hire Warren, rescuing yet another troubled kid by bringing him into the Empire family. But all still looks lost for Empire Records until they get the idea to stage an impromptu benefit concert to save the store. The community turns out big time and donates enough money to pay back Mitchell and to allow Joe to buy the store from him. And then AJ and Corey kiss and decide to pursue a relationship after all as they both head off to college in Boston in the fall.
Yeah, the movie decided to take every serious plot line it had and just throw it in this section here. Like all the melodrama is coming out here. It's been breezy and light most of the way up until now, but now we're talking about amphetamine abuse.
Yeah.
All these heavy subjects.
And Gina and Corey get the brunt of the worst of it. It touched off in the last scene. Corey's little interlude didn't go so well. She took it out on Gina. Gina takes it back out on Corey in this moment, both by getting even by screwing Rex Manning, which was ugly for everybody involved, and then calling out Corey for her drug habit, which was kind of like not in the movie, except one time she takes a pill out of a bottle.
It was so quick. You could easily miss it and be very confused when the whole argument starts. But the 90s was kind of like the apex of amphetamine abuse to help you study in affluent white ladies. Jessie Spano has a famous monologue / song from Saved by the Bell.
Oh, okay.
Don't tell me you don't know the Saved by the Bell scene.
It sounds
where she sings, "I'm so excited," because she's like popping caffeine pills all night to study. We had to put the YouTube in the show notes.
This is a surefire show notes because I got to see it, and everyone else who hasn't seen it needs to watch this, obviously.
God bless Elizabeth Berkley. She tries her very best. She was not ready for this scene as an actor, and she could not pull it off. I think she turned out to be a very good actor in her own right in later years, but she could not handle that scene, and it's pretty embarrassing.
Wow. We're going to watch it together, folks.
Yes.
In the show notes.
In the show notes. It had a renaissance. In the 2010s, I think it became like a big thing. People were rewatching the show and discovered it and were like, oh my God. And that was like right around this time. And then even Requiem for a Dream, aren't the diet pills the mom gets hooked on? Those are basically amphetamines too.
Okay, yeah.
So everyone was real scared about amphetamines back then. And then it's kind of played for laugh, but Joe beats up Lucas a little bit here. We alluded to it earlier, but this is when it actually goes down.
Yeah, Lucas keeps prodding him. He goes for more of this acting really weird and provoke him. And he's like, all right, come in the back. And they do it off screen. Joe closes his office door and you see a body being flung up against the Venetian blinds from the inside. But you hear this very stereotypical punch sound, thwack. And then he comes out. He actually rolls down the stairs onto the floor and then holds his eye. And it's like, whoa, you just fucking punched the kid in the face. And then Joe steps out of the office and makes Lucas tell him, I deserved that.
You know, you deserve that, right? Is what he says. Joe's got about 5 inches and probably 60 pounds on Lucas.
It's pretty shocking. There's some shocking shit in this movie. When we break it down, we zoom in.
Yeah.
It's another thing that didn't seem okay to put on screen, and maybe there could have been a different way to handle that blow up.
To be clear, I understand the impulse to punch Lucas at any moment. I find him frustrating and infuriating. But Joe, you're 36 years old, man.
And you're his boss.
And you're his boss. And his surrogate father, essentially. There's a lot wrong with this scenario.
It was harsh, and it was just weird that they didn't know how harsh it was. They play the you deserved it part as like almost a comic moment or like a safe moment to bring it around. Okay, everyone's okay because he knows he deserved it. Oh shit, you're just kowtowing to your abuser there.
You know who's a character who doesn't have much to do in this movie, who's probably in a fragile emotional state right now, and maybe he could take it out on Lucas for endangering the store and its employees? Just have AJ punch him. They're of the same age. He's got a reason to be like misplaced anger at Lucas because, you know, the whole Corey Rex Manning debacle. Just have him him punch Lucas if you need someone to punch him.
Yeah, but he had to punch Rex.
He's just punching everybody.
You got to split up the punch. Everyone's like, okay, who are you going to punch?
Rock'em Sock'em Robot. I don't know. A punch from AJ looks like it wouldn't knock over a mannequin. Like Rex Manning looked like he would have worked him, to be honest. He's a grown man.
He does. He gives him a little shot. And AJ definitely has a thing over his eye from the shot he takes from Rex.
Something tells me Rex was less inclined to hold back than Joe was with Lucas.
He gives him one good shot before he pieces out.
AJ kind of had it coming.
Yeah, but at least there Rex is the dick. Because first of all, AJ's being held at that point. So Rex gets in a cheap shot. And then they all unceremoniously tell Rex to get the F out of there. But actually, they don't use any profanity because this movie is PG, is it? There was a really weird moment where everyone holds back their F-bombs. And I'm like, why did they all just talk like that in the middle of this actual violent fight? And Rex pieces out by going, why don't you guys just fade away? Like, are you in church right now? What's going on?
I'm trying to find the rating. PG-13. So they get one F-bomb. I don't even know if they use it. I can't think of when they get it.
They should have used it on Rex because that was a weird, unintentional laugh moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we get a pretty nice scene with the Deborah funeral. As mentioned, she tried to kill herself. So they all throw her a funeral or a wake, I guess, more accurately.
It's creative, right? Unless this is something that they ripped off from somewhere else. But I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Corey has this turn where Deb's nice to her for a second. She's like, wait a minute. Let me try to be nice to Deb. We've all been kind of a dick to her. And they light candles and they're all there to say something nice about her to let her know that she is loved. Of course, they all end up just talking about themselves, really. So this kind of has a funny, ironic twist. But actually, it's still warm-hearted and it's still one of the charming parts of the movie.
Yeah, I can't think of another use of this until The Wire did it once in the last episode of the show. But
it feels like a thing, but it felt fresh to me.
I'm sure if we looked it up on like TV tropes, there would be a list of things, but it's not so overdone that it didn't feel novel and interesting in the movie. So it did its job. And then Warren comes back holding a gun bigger than his fucking head. It's some kind of revolver.
Big old dirty hairy gun.
Like a 44 Magnum that he somehow crammed like 11 blanks into. Like how many times does he fire this gun in the store? The gun holds 6 bullets.
He's waving it around like a turkey leg. It's flopping everywhere, shooting everywhere. And it's genuinely scary, right? He got taken away by the police and he's like, I'm coming back. You guys are going to pay for what you did to me. And then it's, oh shit, now it's a hostage situation. And this kid is not just brandishing a gun, but he's firing off shots pretty randomly. He might have already killed somebody. We find out later that it's only loaded with blanks. But like at this point, we don't know. And it's scary.
If Deb wasn't able to disarm him, you know, a cop is putting like 2 to the back of his head as soon as he sees him.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother type of movie at that point.
That would have been an interesting ending, but tragic. A different kind of 90s movie had those tragic kids dying.
Well,
endings.
Clerks originally had that ending. And they changed it. Famously, an armed robber walks in and shoots Dante behind the counter. That was the original ending for Clerks. They made him change it.
Yeah, so there's this weird tone incongruity in this scene because first Joe steps out. He's like, I'm going to be the man. I'm going to talk this kid down. And then Deb one-ups him by saying, actually, I have nothing to live for. I'm going to talk Warren down. But those are both treated very seriously. Like this is real drama and they're risking their life to go talk to this troubled kid with a gun. And then they cut to the back of the store where the rest of the employees do a Three Stooges style sight gag where one head pops out behind the other, behind the other, behind the other. And they all make a joke about, your name's not Warren? His name's not Warren? I thought his name was Warren. Isn't his name Warren? And I'm like, wait, how does that go together? Why did those people like cracking silly jokes when their 2 friends just went out to face down a kid with a gun?
I hate to keep bringing it up, but maybe this scene was supposed to be all humorous or all serious. And it got taken away from Allan Moyle. And what we get is this weird combination of tones that don't really work together. But yeah, it's true. It's a very, very strange choice to have
it's a
this
weird
slapstick comedy thrown into this very serious hostage situation. And then, you had it in the notes. You're right. It was Mark's idea to save the store with the benefit concert.
Yeah, he went from being a total doof to being like, wait, I just had an idea how to end the movie. And he runs out in front of the news cameras while they're still talking about the cops taking away the boy with the gun. And he's, oh, by the way, we're having a party tonight at midnight. Come on down. But they left out a real big thing, which is to rally the neighborhood behind the store. Is like, that's a trope you can see coming. But he doesn't say that on the news broadcast. He doesn't say, the store's in trouble. Corporate America's taking us over. If you love us, come down tonight and help us with this benefit. He never says that. He just says, hey, we're having a party at midnight. Come on down to the party. It's free.
Why would he say it's free?
Exactly. First of all,
charge people money for it. Are you going to save the store?
He doesn't say help us. He says it's free. He's working against himself. And then just before before they cut him off, he says this one cryptic line, "Damn the man, save the empire." And it's like, people are supposed to figure out what that means.
It's the most his absolute drug and guar-addled brain could come up with on the spot. We got to give him some credit. It was more sensical than anything else he's been able to say throughout the entire movie.
It's true. It's his one moment of clarity, and it does saves the store. So what can we say?
But then Gina, like, everyone is going through their big trauma during the funeral scene. They're all having these like real cathartic moments. And then Gina goes, "I want to be the singer in a band, but I'm too scared." That's supposed to be her big obstacle. And it's like, really? You know, Deb tried to kill herself. Corey's on amphetamines. You just need the courage. Like, she's just like the cowardly lion. Like, I want to get on stage and sing a song, but I'm scared.
And she says that at the hour 20 mark. Oh, wait a minute. Before we end this movie, I have a thing that I've wanted this whole time. I want to be the lead singer in a band. Can we rearrange that? And they're like, yeah, if you're willing to climb up on the roof for a minute, you can give it a shot.
Like, it was like, have you ever tried to sing? And she's like, no, I don't even know if I can, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to live my dream. Then, much like Ruby from Summer of Sam, she immediately is the lead singer of a band.
Yeah.
She gets on stage and sings a song. And
she's all right.
I don't know if it's really Renee Zellweger singing, but whoever it was, they did a good job. It sounded fine.
It matches enough. It seems natural and not overly overwrought. So you're like, that's probably her. I bought it. And I'm like, okay, good for her. She lived her dream.
And then AJ and Corey have their big moment. I just wanted to say these kids are going to be broken up in 3 months and they're both going to be in Boston. Absolutely. Corey will be fine. She's going to Harvard.
Yeah.
But AJ, who just decided to go to art school basically to be with her, is going to be absolutely miserable. But he's in Boston, so I'm sure he can meet somebody else or just find something else to occupy his time.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Not a big college town.
Maybe he ends up working in a meatpacking plant with a couple of brothers from Ireland.
I like that. I'm dropping a Spinal Tap reference and you're throwing in Boondock.
You had the better movie for your reference. Mine was less subtle. And yeah, they have their big moment. Like we said, it's fine. Liv Tyler makes some interesting acting choices in this scene, but you were able to wave them off by saying she's a teenager. She's being dramatic.
I kind of love her as just a weirdo kid who flops around when she gets overly excited.
She's got some disorder that she loses all control of her extremities.
She keeps swooning in his arms and just going blah, like just be a total goof. It's kind of cute.
Yeah, no, it works. And then Mitchell agrees to sell the store to Joe just because like he hates it. Like he hates everyone in it.
Yeah.
He finds them all annoying and he's like, fuck it. I don't need to make any money on this deal.
He walks in and it's real crowded and people are trying to buy CDs from him and he can't work the register. And he's like, oh, this is so gross. Get me out of here, please.
Like, look at all these customers. This place must be worthless.
He goes, I'm ready to sell to you cheap. And it's like, okay, thanks for making that easy. It doesn't make any sense, but at least it got us out of the scene.
Mitchell is a master negotiator. I don't like it here. You can have it for free. And then, all right, so there is some more behind the scenes stuff to get into this movie. Do you want to hear some little tidbits?
Yeah, what happened to these people? Because these are not household names. Allan, Moyle, Carol Heikkinen.
So Allan Moyle, he'd been in the industry for quite a while at this point. He'd been a working director since 1974. But like I mentioned, he didn't have a bunch of huge hits. He had Times Square in 1980, which starred Tim Curry and, strangely enough, our beloved Trini Alvarado from The Frighteners. We discovered her last week, and here we are talking about her again.
Yeah, that's something I could actually go check her out in, because we both liked her quite a bit.
He was actually fired from Times Square for disagreeing with producer Robert Stigwood over the edit. So that seems to be a running theme with his movies, maybe. He's got some control issues.
Or he's a thoughtful creator who keeps getting the short end of the stick.
Well, then we mentioned Pump Up the Volume. It was well reviewed, but financially unsuccessful. That was the Christian Slater movie we brought up in the monologue. Then his last movie was 2007's Weirdsville, which got pretty good reviews, but was not a financial success again. What he's been working on now is pretty cool, though. So he's a type 2 diabetic.
Okay.
And he's been working on a documentary called How Sweet It Is, where he and 4 other candidates are trying to cure their diabetes just through lifestyle changes with no medication.
Interesting.
Under doctor supervision, of course.
Okay.
Like they're not just doing this by the seat of their pants. It is a real thing, like trying to change their eating habits, exercise habits, and seeing if they can reverse type 2 diabetes. So that's a very noble cause. And he's filming it and he's going to be releasing it as a documentary when it's all done.
Interesting. I was worried for a minute that it was like quackery and then it was going to be like dangerous stuff to put on the air. But if it's all legit, then that's a really cool project.
As far as I know, we haven't seen the movie yet,
That's
but
true.
The synopsis I read of it sounds like they're doing it the right way and being monitored every step to see if they're in any danger. So Carol Heikkinen, this was her second movie. She wrote The Thing Called Love. She wrote a TV movie called Sagamore and a movie called Center Stage. I've not seen any of these. Couldn't tell you if they're any good. She got a sweetheart deal, though, we mentioned. I'm sure the cult classic status of this has made her relatively wealthy. 1% of soundtrack royalties and 5% of merchandise sales. This was a big soundtrack, and I'm sure the cult fandom around it has led to a lot of merchandise being sold.
Yeah, I hope she got something out of this.
Well, she got $500,000 just for
That's
writing
true.
it, so she definitely got something out of it.
All
That's
right,
a pretty
too.
good deal for a relatively unknown screenwriter. screenwriter.
Pretty savvy, yeah.
And she's, we mentioned, involved in the musical. It's coming out, so hopefully that's a success. I might check it out if it's playing near me. If it's in New York, I could take a trip into the city, check out the Empire Records musical. That'd be fun.
Bring that to show and tell one day.
Unfortunately for Regency, who won the bidding war with Warner Brothers over the script, right after they made that deal, he was approached with a script for Clueless. He said, I got Empire Records coming out. That's our teen movie. We don't need another one.
No.
Turned down Clueless, which of course ended up being a big hit.
Yeah.
And Empire Records made about $57 million fewer dollars. And Clueless did, so bit of a missed opportunity there.
But, kudos for his loyalty. He's like, thrown in with this gang over here. We're going to make a go of it.
Bless his heart. They both have such incredible staying power. Both movies they feel like equals now, but I'm sure it was a painful miss for him back in the day.
Yeah.
Do you know who the actress originally cast for Deb was?
Tell me.
You do know because you read my notes, but it was Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
A young Angelina was chosen for the role. She was described by a producer as a force of nature, but she was, and I quote, just too much, and they cast Robin Tunney instead.
I can absolutely see Angelina just slotting into this effortlessly.
Sure, absolutely.
Because she does bring a lot, but the thing is, Robin Tunney brought a ton too. It wouldn't be a big swap. Robin Tunney brought so much. She brought her own force of nature to this, I think. So it would have been a great casting, but I think they did just as well.
They definitely didn't miss with the recasting. They nailed it. But I could totally see Angelina in this character. There's definitely a lot of overlap with some other type of character she's played in the past. So.
Yeah, and it would have been a shame to have the Deb character be as small as it ended up in this edit. At least Liv Tyler and Renee Zellweger got as much screen time as anybody else does in this ensemble piece. But Deb is just kind of dancing around the edges of this story, and that would have been a shame for Angelina.
Absolutely. So now I alluded to this earlier. I think it's time to reveal the big name actor that had a role in this movie that was cut. It's a bit more complicated than just his role was cut. So Tobey Maguire was in this movie. He filmed scenes in this movie. He was a character named Andre, one of the ones that I guess was a victim of the edit.
Oh my.
But even before the editing issues with this movie, he had a bigger role and he left the movie. So it was filmed in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is a beach town. It's a coastal town. And Allan Moyle wanted all the actors to live in beachfront properties next door to each other so that they could form a bond. A lot of movies have done this, like ensemble pieces like this, so that everyone's familiar. And if they want to improv, they have a good baseline to bounce off each other, whatever.
Makes sense.
Not uncommon. But then Maguire, I guess, didn't mesh with the rest of the cast. He felt like a bit of a loner. He took some, what's described in the quote as a psychotropic drug. So mushrooms, LSD, whatever you want to call it. Wandered around, ended up in Moyle's beach house in the basement, eating a giant bowl of cereal. Moyle found him there. They had long heart-to-heart for several hours in the middle of the night. And Tobey Maguire said he wanted to leave the movie, go back to Hollywood and figure out his life and write a screenplay. Whoa. Moyle said, sure, and I'll buy your screenplay. I don't know if he was just trying to get him out of his fucking house.
Oh, wow.
If,
yeah.
They really bonded over the idea, whatever this movie was going to be, and they thought it would be great. But Moyle said, as far as he knew, he never wrote the script, but he starred in The Ice Storm 2 years later, and that kind of put him on the path to stardom. So that was an interesting little tidbit. But then Ethan Embry, I guess, was asked to comment on that story, and he says, I don't think he ever came to North Carolina, which is just a remarkable difference of memory.
Yeah.
He was in my basement eating cereal. We had an hours long talk, and Ethan Embry's like, I don't think he ever left California. But he said, I remember seeing him in an audition. I remember smoking a cigarette with him. I totally forgotten he was out there until people started talking about it again years later. So who knows what really happened.
That's wildly different. I can imagine maybe he dropped a tab on the plane and then he went straight into the director's basement, but it was a real stretch to make those stories line up.
And then we mentioned a little bit that the movie basically didn't get a theatrical release because it was originally supposed to get one. The studio wasn't happy with it. They didn't promote it in any way. They put it in a couple theaters, 87 theaters to be exact, but they didn't advertise it at all. They didn't even have a premiere for the cast. They really just let it flounder. And this was a movie they were planning to put a significant marketing budget behind and really release it widely. I mean, it's always tricky covering movies that didn't get a theatrical release because how can you really judge their merits? But the fact that this was a movie that Regency had invested a lot in and had big plans for, and then by the time they saw it, they just completely changed their mind. It feels like it qualifies. You know what I mean?
It was enough of an attempt. Like it got close enough to where it should have been put out. It should have had a chance to make money. But it's a shame. Like it's not that bad. I mean, we talked a lot of shit about this movie, but it's got a lot of charms.
We're just prone, I think, to looking for flaws to talk about because we're analyzing these movies at a more granular level than they were probably designed to be analyzed.
Sure. And I get it. I try to go back to what my first impressions were, and I'm like, oh, this thing is kind of chopped up and wacky. But like, you still get to see all these charming young actors on screen. They have a bunch of fun moments. You recognize the drama that they're going through. You hear the good music, and you're like, that should be enough to bring in some millions, not $300,000.
It deserved better. Maybe it's not the best movie ever made, but it didn't get a fair shake.
It could have earned back its budget at least with a little bit of help.
Yeah, $10 million is not a huge sum to recoup at the box office.
Yeah.
Movies do it every day, even now. When
just on that poster, you got Liv Tyler and Renee Zellweger looking cute as hell in a whole cast of cuties posing in hipster 90s clothes. That should sell you $10 million worth of tickets.
And I'm pretty sure those Aerosmith music videos were out already. So Liv Tyler was like a name, right?
Okay.
Crazy Aerosmith music video. 1993, it was out. So yeah, so she had a little bit of name recognition there. She was the girl from the Aerosmith video that everyone was obsessed with. Getting to it a little bit late, we do have a Justified crossover of the week.
Justified crossover of the week.
What? Oh my God.
That's right. I waited till the end because it's a pretty minor character in the movie, but not in the show. So Michael Harding played U.S. Marshal Bill Nichols in Justified. R.I.P. Bill Nichols. He gets killed in an episode. Spoilers. But he was cop number 4 in this. I assume at the end when they're everyone arresting, coming into arrest warrant.
That is a minor role. You found the crossover.
I debated including it, but because he has a real role in Justified where he has like a name and an arc and stuff, I thought he deserved recognition. All right, so let's see what the cast has been up to. So Anthony LaPaglia, we did talk about him because he was Detective Lou Petrocelli in Summer of Sam.
Yes.
So we just saw him in a movie. He was a big part of that movie in a weird way because his character didn't really end up doing anything in the long, but
he had the fake out plot line where he was the cop with the possible ties to the mobster, right?
Yep, that was him. So we did talk about him fairly recently. He is probably best known for, he had a multi-year run on Frasier. I think he was part of the main cast for a couple seasons.
I'd forgotten that.
I never really watched Frasier. I should. He was also considered for the role of Tony Soprano, which would have been interesting. I think he could have pulled it off, honestly. Not like Gandolfini did. I mean, that's like an all-time. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking to you about it for. You refuse to watch The Sopranos.
I refuse. I just delay.
Much to my chagrin. He was cast in Django Unchained, but I love this tidbit. He left the production saying it was, quote, out of control.
Okay.
He seems like a laid-back guy. He probably didn't want to be around Quentin Tarantino for 4 months or whatever.
Too high-strung for him.
A little too high-strung, maybe. He's going to be in the upcoming Netflix crime show, Florida Man, which based on the title, I think is probably going to be like a crime comedy. Just because it's a funny name for a show.
Sounds funny.
Johnny Whitworth, AJ, did not get a name in the synopsis. He's been busy, though. He's been CSI Miami, The 100, and Blind Spot. These are all network procedurals type stuff.
Yeah, good work.
I think that 100 was a CW show, though. But he's been in some big movies, too. 310 to Yuma, which we talked about as a show and tell a couple months ago. A movie we both enjoyed. Limitless, the Bradley Cooper, where he takes a pill and he gets super smart.
Yeah, that was fun. I don't remember him in that, but good for him.
And Ghost Rider, Spirit of Vengeance, not Ghost Rider 1, the sequel.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Plus future episode Valentine, which is a horror movie from the early 2000s that is terrible, but I watched like 100 times as a teenager for some reason.
All right. Well, I'm going to watch it next.
Oh, that'll be a Blastober in like 3 years because we have the movies for all that planned out way in advance. Ethan Embry, we mentioned he did that thing you do and Can't Hardly Wait, the Brotherhood thing, but he's been doing some stuff the last 10 years, some pretty good stuff. He was in The Guest, which was a movie I quite liked, the Dan Stevens movie. It's kind of a thriller, creepy thriller. He was in Blind Spotting, not Blind Spot, not the show that Johnny Whitworth was in, the movie.
Okay. Got to keep these, keep your spots separate.
Daveed Diggs was the star of that movie, and I think he also wrote it. Good movie. Check it out. And First Man, a movie I quite liked, the Ryan Gosling, Damien Chazelle movie about Neil Armstrong and the first trip to the moon.
I've been interested to watch that, except I fall asleep every time I think about it.
It's on the schedule, asshole. So
okay, I have to stay up for it.
It's a good movie, goddammit. I have to pick on First Man and my boy Damien Chazelle. I have a group of friends that I cannot get to watch Whiplash with me for whatever reason. They refuse to watch it, even though it's like a really good movie. It will never qualify for this podcast, so I can't make them watch it because it'll be like a podcast episode.
You can take out your frustration on me and force me to watch.
Pisses me off that the only movie from Damien Chazelle everyone watched is La La Land, and that's his worst movie.
Oh, okay. I fell asleep on that one too, so don't feel bad.
All right, fair. And then he's a regular on Grace and Frankie, which is a show I do not watch, but my wife Jamie really enjoys.
Oh, okay.
It's like a fun little breezy Netflix comedy, as I understand it. And he had a recurring role on Sneaky Pete, which was a fun show on Amazon that I liked, created by Graham Yost, who was the creator of a little show called Justified.
Justified crossover of the week.
Oh, you crossed back over.
Double bonus Justified crossover of the week.
God damn.
For Zellweger, I don't think I have to catch people up on Zellweger too much. She's still a big star, but Jerry Maguire would come the next year. So this is pre-Jerry Maguire. I think most people call that her big breakout because this movie obviously didn't get a lot of fanfare at the time.
Yeah, so maybe I gave her too much credit. She didn't have the poster pull that she would have had a year later.
No, yeah, she was not a star at this point. She'd been in that Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie with Matthew McConaughey that everyone brings up as really bad. So she'd been acting, but not in a big way. And then she's probably best known as Bridget Jones. She was recently in a NBC true crime dramedy called The Thing About Pam, which I didn't even hear of, but apparently got some backlash because it's based on a true crime and it treated it a little flippantly, like somebody was really killed, and it wasn't exactly sensitive to that. She's got 2 Academy Awards. She won Best Supporting Actress in 2004 for Cold Mountain and Best Actress for 2020's Judy Garland biopic Judy, which I am just now remembering is a thing that exists, and won an Oscar somehow.
I kind of remembered Cold Mountain being a big deal back in the day, but I did not remember Judy coming and going at all.
You want to talk about movies that put me to sleep? Fucking Cold Mountain. I cannot make it through that movie. I've tried a couple times. Can't do it. Liv Tyler's been in some big movies. She was in all the Lord of the Rings movies, obviously. The Incredible Hulk. She played Betty Ross in The Incredible Hulk. She was in Ad Astra, which we'll be covering in the relatively near future, I believe.
Oh, I like that one.
It's a good movie. I love James Gray. I'm excited for Armageddon time. She was in The Strangers, which is, I don't know if you'd call The Strangers underrated, but I really like it. It's a very effective little horror movie.
Okay.
She was on The Leftovers, of course, which you just finished.
She was great.
She's great in that. Robin Tunney's breakout role would also happen in 96, much like Zellweger. That was when The Craft came out.
Okay.
She's in the underrated Arnold movie, End of Days. I actually really like End of Days. Do you remember that one?
I vaguely remember it, but I don't know that I ever watched it. That's definitely something I would go back and check out.
It's a bomb, so we can talk about it one day.
Oh, okay.
Maybe for a Blastober. I don't know if it might be too much of an action movie to be a Blastober movie, but it also is too much of a horror movie to be an action movie, so I don't know where it lies.
Interesting.
We'll have to use our judgment. She received critical acclaim for her performance in Open Window in 2006. It's a little indie movie I haven't been able to track down, but apparently she's great in it. But she's done a lot on TV. She was in Prison Break, the first couple seasons, which were really good before it got really bad. The Mentalist, which is a show I have no desire of ever seeing.
No.
And The Fix, which I do not know what that is.
Okay.
And our boy Lucas, to wrap it up, Rory Cochrane, was already kind of known. He had a decent sized role in Dazed and Confused.
Okay.
And then he was on CSI Miami from 2002 to 2007. A lot of procedurals with this guy.
Yeah.
To do those. He was on 24 for a season, I think, when it came back in 2009. Then he was in some pretty high profile movies like Argo, Public Enemies, future episode White Boy Rick, future episode of Scanner Darkly. Wow, all right, he's been in some bombs.
Oh, damn.
But I quite like Argo and White Boy Rick. I have not seen the other two.
Yeah, as much as we both hated Lucas, I had to begrudgingly admit I thought he was a compelling actor.
He's got a presence.
His character was stupid, his lines were stupid, and yet he had presence. He had something that he brought on screen that made you kind of want to watch him.
Absolutely agree. He's not a lost cause, just maybe a poorly edited character, you can say. But there's something missing from that character that it doesn't quite add up when it's all said and done. So that was Empire Records. Did you have any grand summations? I feel like you kind of got into it with your Joe rant.
If you'll indulge me, maybe I'll try out my final Joe wrap-up.
Let's do it.
Here's what the movie, I think, could have done. And maybe it did this, and then they edited it back out. But here's the pitch. You introduce Joe. He's an older, stern authority figure with a heart of gold. You reveal that he had a soft spot for these crazy, difficult kids. And then you let us spend time with the kids over the course of the movie until we fall in love with the kids too, just like Joe has. And then in the end, you let the kids come and save Joe so that you save the store so he could continue saving kids. At least in the way it's edited, they decided to keep Joe on the outside of our empathy. It's not that he was totally unsympathetic, but we didn't see things from his perspective for a while. We didn't see what he cared about, what he was trying for, even though he stays at the center of the plot. The whole thing is about finding the money, saving the store. And so as a result of that, Joe's journey is not that satisfying because we weren't on board until late in the movie. And the kids' various passing troubles seem a little bit flighty because they don't have that extra meaning of, oh, this is all Joe's world. This just looks like some kind of stupid stuff that teenagers go through. But you give it more meaning if we were like, this is all meaningful because it's meaningful to Joe and he's helping them work through this time in their lives. Anyway, it feels to me like this huge missed opportunity because they didn't anchor Joe at the beginning and everything else was kind of flopping around the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It's something about the way the movie's structured that you miss out on some extra layers there that would have added some depth. I am not nearly as eloquent as you in putting it into words. So
that's very kind. I think you're quite eloquent, but
hey, look at this. All right, this has been a marathon recording. It's probably time to call it a night, but I got to tease next week's episode. This is a big one. A lot of people asked for this one. We're doing Speed Racer, the Wachowskis' Speed Racer.
Oh my gosh.
There's a bunch of problematic people in this movie. It's going to be weird to talk about.
Oh, that's always fun for us.
Allegedly.
Yeah, it's going to be complicated to talk about, but it's a kind of a movie that was made on a much grander scale than Empire Records, but has a similar trajectory of just being kind of ignored and cast aside by the studio when it was released, but then went on to be a huge cult classic. People love this movie now.
Oh, okay.
It's made in a very distinctive style. The Wachowskis, clearly, they had a real vision for that movie, and they made the movie they wanted to because they had the cachet at that point in time in Hollywood to make the movie they wanted.
I did not see the movie. Bring a little bit of personal history with Speed Racer being on TV when I was a kid, and we'll see what that evokes in me when I try to watch the movie. I'm excited for it.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe to the pod if you can. We appreciate it.
Sure do.
You
can follow us on Twitter at BlastZonePod. Shoot us an email, blastzonepod@gmail.com. Any feedback, suggestions, questions,
recipes.
And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.